You know, it's strange how even scientists argue about the dumbest things. Like, have you ever wondered what color your poop should be? No. Well, then you haven't been paying attention because it turns out that some astronomers are fighting over the age of Saturn's rings. Yeah, really. Is this some kind of joke? What's so hard to understand about those rings? The obvious answer is that we don't understand them. But there's no need for a bunch of experts to shout at each other over this. Let's just agree that they're pretty and move on with our lives. All right, let's do that. Okay, you want to talk about the age of Saturn's rings. Fine, but can we do it like normal people? Like normal people do when they get in an argument and start talking over each other? And also bring up irrelevant stuff just to make their point seem better. Yes, that's what I thought. And just to keep things equal, both sides of the argument will be discussed in this video. So it's not my fault if you feel compelled to pick one side and get angry at the other. In fact, that would be great because then I could go out tonight and someone else could take care of the channel. Thank you. Okay, the question is whether Saturn's rings are only 100 million years old or if they are as old as the planet itself, which means billions of years old. According to some data, the younger estimate seems more realistic. This is great news for astronomers because it means that we might be living in a cosmic golden age and that Saturn is at its most beautiful right now. How could this be possible? Because it turns out that planets form rings like these by crashing into other objects in space. The problem is that every time the planet crashes into something, the ring gets a little bit thicker. If Saturn has had its rings for a long time, then they should be several miles thick. But they aren't. They're barely a mile thick. Therefore, it follows that Saturn's rings can't be billions of years old. So they must be much younger. There is only one problem with this argument. It doesn't make any sense. Don't forget that planets don't just crash into things. They also get bombarded by meteoroids, comets, and asteroids all the time. A lot of them hit Saturn's rings and push material away from them. So while it's true that the rings get thicker over time, they can also become thinner. Therefore, the fact that the rings aren't thicker doesn't necessarily mean that they're young. It's probably just a coincidence that they're the same thickness as they were when Saturn formed. Now, unfortunately, there's nothing that can prove this hypothesis wrong. So basically, one group of astronomers can scream all they want about how the rings are young, and the other group can yell as loud as they want about how the rings are old. And in the end, no one will be able to say they were right. The debate started back in 2020 after some astronomers published a paper in the journal Nature Astronomy, according to which Saturn's rings are indeed very young, only 100 million years old. The author of the study used computer simulations to figure out what happens to the rings over time and concluded that something unusual must have happened in the recent past. Something that caused them to thin out a bit. Now, normally, it takes a few billion years for this to happen. But if Saturn's rings are as old as the planet itself, well, they shouldn't exist anymore because they would have disappeared completely. In other words, according to their model, Saturn's rings couldn't possibly be billions of years old. They would have to be young, and the evidence for that was right there in front of everyone's eyes the whole time. We just didn't see it. Basically, their argument goes like this. If the rings are old, then Saturn's atmosphere is full of hydrogen and helium. But observations show that this isn't the case. There isn't enough gas in the atmosphere, so the rings must be young. That's because when they're first formed, Saturn's rings release a lot of gas into the atmosphere. The gas forms a huge bubble around the planet. Then it flows along Saturn's magnetic field lines into space. However, if the rings are young, this means that the bubble is still there. It hasn't had enough time to disappear yet. This is the smoking gun. It proves that the rings are young. And if they are, then maybe we really are living in a golden age of some sort. Now, here's where things get difficult. First of all, no one's sure if the rings actually release gas when they're formed. After all, we've never seen another planet form rings, so we can only speculate about this. Second, it turns out that this gas bubble could have been blown away by Saturn's winds. According to a paper published by some researchers in response to the previous study, this is quite plausible. Winds at Saturn's poles are strong enough to blow the gas away in less than 100 million years. So the fact that the bubble doesn't exist anymore doesn't prove that the rings are young. And third, it turns out that the authors of the first paper made a mistake when they wrote their computer program. Their model assumed that Saturn has no magnetic field, so the gas bubble had nowhere to go. But Saturn does have a magnetic field, and it's not even a weak one. It's the strongest magnetic field in the solar system, so yeah, there's that. In any case, this doesn't prove that the rings are old either. It's just another piece in a gigantic jigsaw puzzle. And at this point, it seems that both sides have equally good arguments. Sure, some people can look at the evidence and conclude that the rings must be young. Others can look at the same evidence and conclude that the rings must be old. So who's right? Actually, why don't we ask the rings themselves? How old are you? I think they'll be really happy to tell us. Well, they won't. We can't ask them anything. They're rocks. Rocks don't talk, especially not to reporters, so we're done here. Case closed. I don't know if this counts as a scientific breakthrough of the century, but I'm pretty sure that in 100 million years from now, historians will remember that in 2023 we tried to find out the age of Saturn's rings. And I bet they'll also remember that we failed, but here's the thing. Even if we can't answer this particular question, we're learning a lot about Saturn in the process. And the more we learn about it, the more we realize just how weird this planet is. It's not just the rings. If you want to learn more about Saturn, watch this video. For example, did you know that Saturn is the least dense planet in the solar system? Its average density is less than that of water. So Saturn would float if it were put in an ocean. Not just float, it would bob up and down like a cork. It's like the planet wants to reach out and touch the sky. Of course, this would never happen because Saturn is a gas giant. It doesn't have a solid surface. It's surrounded by a thick atmosphere that gradually fades into space. The pressure in this atmosphere is so high that it would crush you like a grape if you tried to land there. But Saturn is still the least dense planet. Its core must be made of some exotic matter that weighs practically nothing. Scientists think it's some kind of iron, but it's not like regular iron. Maybe it's anti-iron. Irony. It's iron that weighs nothing. Irony. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Also, this channel would be nothing without the support of its members. So thanks for all the support that you've given me over the years. It means a lot. All the best to you. Bye.